Think of a rosebud on a brisk morning, dew glistening on its vibrant red petals which are anxious to blossom at the first glimpse of a sunray. Much like the swirls of the Milky Way, rolling storm clouds, and blooming rosebuds, the universe is an eternal, creative unfolding. As creations of this universe, we are capable of tapping into this creative energy. In fact, it is our job to do our part in this beautiful and constant unfolding. We are born with this ability. As we go through this experience of life, this ability can become dulled as we gather new opinions and perspectives. We begin to do more of the same and less of the new. We filter new ideas through an artificial lens of comparison and judgment instead of our natural lens of curiosity and creativity. Life is about finding excitement in the unknown. It's experiencing joy at the sound of a new perspective and embracing similarities over differences. Creating beauty within our own experience is the purpose of life. Life is creation. What is your take on creativity, creation, and maybe just the purpose of life in general?
Wow, that was a good quote.
Thanks, man.
I especially liked, what did you say about beauty? Is one of the last lines.
Life is about finding excitement in the unknown, experiencing joy at the sound of a new perspective, and embracing similarities over differences. Creating beauty within our own experience is the purpose of life.
So I hang on to that a lot. You know, Leonardo da Vinci, he would inscribe on his paintings in Latin, but what the translation was beauty is the form of virtue. Beauty is the form of virtue. So if you think about that, you know, the relationship between beauty and meaning, it's a pretty powerful idea. And our culture right now kind of dilutes beauty a lot. I think it kind of, obviously it sexualizes beauty, but it also has this kind of mixing of ugly and beautiful. We were talking about this earlier, but if you're going to convince somebody that evil is good, it's going to be very hard to do. But if you convince someone that ugly is beautiful, that's your first step. And so you're talking about creativity. In the art world, there's a big push to make ugly things appear to be beautiful. There's, you know, that line that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That doesn't ring true for me. I don't think so. I think beauty is universal. I think it's universally recognized. I think at times appearances can be a veil. Beauty can be a veil if it's not really looked into. But I think when you see virtuous things, there's an underlying virtue underneath it. There's beauty and virtue are related. You know, we were talking about beauty and the beast in terms of archetypes, and there's an interesting thing that they did where the whole message about that is kind of like, don't judge by appearances. Sometimes this hideous beast that's kidnapping you is actually your true love. All these really strange inverted meanings to things, but those don't ring true to me. I think that there was a time in our culture, going back to the Renaissance, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and you're seeing this a lot in social media. There's this big revival of these great beauty in terms of architecture and paintings and art. And people are kind of realizing when we took those things away, when architecture just became utility and we lost ornament, we started losing the meaning behind our culture. And so I think that beauty is something worthy of pursuing, and art and creativity. I think that if you aim towards beauty, I think that you know, there's a quote, I think by Dostoevsky. How do you say that? Dostoevsky. He said, beauty will save the world. And he was coming from communist Russia. But I hold on to that beauty will save the world. I'm a filmmaker, and so I'm always trying to convey beauty in film. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah. So beauty is this universal idea, but much like I said in this quote, as we go through this experience of life and adopt new perspectives, we might lose this natural, clear, vivid lens of beauty because we start filtering it through judgment and comparison.
Right.
Maybe with an alternate agenda of some sort, versus just a optimistic, curious, and creative lens.
Right.
So it's really, you know, up to the individual how you perceive beauty. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I would say I'm not interested in individual beauty as much as I'm interested in universal beauty.
I see.
And I think that was a big shift that I probably went through at one point, because we're taught the opposite of that in college, I would say, in school. We're kind of taught the opposite of that, individualism. And, you know, you can see what happened with the modern art movement. So at the end of the 1880s, we had Impressionism was a big art movement. And that was reducing the resolution of paintings. And it was influenced by, we're getting kind of like an art history lesson, but we're talking about beauty, so we might as well, yeah. But, you know, there was the French souvenir shops, and instead of an artist waiting around for someone to purchase an expensive portrait, you could make a quick portrait or make a quick painting and sell it at a souvenir shop to tourists. And that kind of influenced Impressionism. And some people say Van Gogh, probably the greatest, one of the greatest impressionists. He was the father of the modern art movement, which is an unfortunate title for Van Gogh, I'd say. I'm a big fan of Van Gogh, but it was reducing the resolution. If you go back to the Italian, there's the Italian Renaissance. After that, there was the Dutch Golden Age, which was highly influenced by the Italian Renaissance. Usually these golden ages happened after a big war. The Dutch fought for 80 years to get their independence. Once they gained their independence, after 80 years of bloodshed and sacrifice, they entered into a cultural golden age. And that's where you get Rembrandt and a lot of those great painters. And they had this kind of idealistic culture in a way. I think it ended up getting decayed because of alcohol, and that was kind of depicted in the paintings. And so there was like a decay over 100 years. But so you go from Italian Renaissance, you go to Dutch Golden Age, and then a couple hundred years later, you're getting into the Impressionism, reducing the resolution of paintings, simplifying it. And then there was also the Art Nouveau movement around that same time, which I'm kind of a fan of, but that was kind of the birth of the machine age, because now they're using lithographs for paintings rather than paintbrushes. So now you do a painting once and you can use a lithograph, you can use a machine to duplicate that painting and make more money that way. And all those kind of dovetailed into modern art movement. And the modern art movement really upended everything. That's when we get into ugly is beautiful, in my opinion. And you get into cubism and subjectivism, and you get into, well, one guy wants to get drunk and splatter paint on the floor, and that's just as beautiful as the Mona Lisa to some people, right? So if you can trick people that ugly is beautiful, pretty soon you can trick people that
evil is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting perspective. Well, Tyler, I appreciate you coming on the show. Brought you on because you're a filmmaker,
right?
And you have an amazing film coming out here. The trailer's out, the short film's out. It's titled Abbey Gate. But I would love to just kind of, get to know you as a person while also talking about your film. How'd you get into the film industry? What drew you to it? You're clearly a very creative individual. So I'd love to tap into that. And then, once we start talking about this, let's go into Hollywood, kind of your perspective on Hollywood, where it's headed, where it's coming from, what the purpose of Hollywood is, because it's probably not what most would think it is. And then, throughout the conversation, I would love to just keep tapping into your creative spirit. So let's just start with how you got into film.
Up until maybe the age of 12, 13 years old, I was on like a one-track thing to be I would say a missionary, not exactly a pastor, but I didn't get along super well in public school. I didn't feel in place. I felt like someone dropped me off at the wrong planet. And then I started discovering a church, and I happened to find a good church, not saying everyone has the best experiences at churches. I happened to have one, and I really fit in there, and I felt like I could develop my values there. So up until the age of 13, if a teacher asked me what I wanted to be, I didn't know how to answer, because it's just like, I'm going to go around the world. I'm going to tell people the good news, that's my job. I don't know, why would I want to do anything else? So at a very young age, I started doing missionary trips, Mexico. I went to Costa Rica, by myself at 13 with a group, and slowly but surely was getting disillusioned. Part of that was because the broken home environment that I was raised in. Part of that was just not feeling that the integrity that I had was being shared with everyone around me. And I felt like maybe this isn't the answer. And I started asking a lot of questions at church. And so dropping a little bit out of church in high school, middle school, I actually became a skateboarder. That was kind of like my outlet. That was my outlet.
Okay.
Yeah.
How big into skateboarding did you get?
Pretty big.
Yeah.
Pretty big into it. Yeah. Just as soon as I started getting into magazines and stuff like that, I graduated film school and I kind of quit school and quit skateboarding around the same time.
Okay.
I was pursuing it pretty heavily, but I always had, I didn't look at it as a way to make money where the people I was surrounded with looked at it as their potential career. I was in LA and a lot of my friends became really good professional skateboarders, but they were looking at it as a way to pay rent. And I just never could jump on that boat. I didn't think I could do that. So as soon as I graduated film school, I decided, okay, I'm going to cut out skateboarding and start trying to make films. So around high school, I had to start thinking about what I wanted to do for a career, for college. And I, of course, at that time was making a lot of skate videos, doing a lot of editing at a very young age. And film was just the only thing that I could imagine doing. So I went into film school.
So your film career kind of started with filming skateboarding.
It did.
How cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of people kind of coming out that way. Spike Jonze was kind of the first one to be a director of skate videos on a skate company, became Oscar-winning director. But at least, what it did for me that kind of sets me apart a little bit? In skateboarding, you got the athlete and the camera guy, and I was usually the athlete in that situation. I wasn't filming skating much, but I was editing it. And so when I got into film, to me, it was just the actor was the athlete. Like the actor is the show. You get into film school and they don't talk about the actor very much. It's really bizarre. They don't talk about the story that much and they don't talk about the actor that much. And you get convoluted with all the mechanics. Okay, here's the lighting, here's the camera, here's this, here's that. Okay, well, the actor's the show. And so when I get on set, I'm making sure me and the actor have a good relationship. And that's kind of where I gravitate. Some directors, they focus on the camera. Some directors focus on the light, whatever. But for me, it's just like the actor is the athlete, So I think the biggest takeaway I got from skateboarding was just looking at the person in front of the camera as being the show. And so, so went into film school. I told you about that, didn't want to go the internship route. At that time, video wasn't a big thing. You couldn't make a living doing video, but you could make a living in the studios. So the studios, this is around 2010, 2009. And so I knew I didn't want to do the internship route. I didn't want to do an internship at CBS and work my way up through the studios. There's no way I have the patience for that. I already had my cameras, I already had my editing gear. I'm like, I just want to make films as quickly as possible. And quickly I started getting hired. My first jobs were getting hired by a magazine called Flaunt Magazine. And I was 21 at the time, and they would do interviews with some of these up and coming stars. I remember Nicholas Hoult and Zendaya, Liam Hemsworth. I did a bunch of kind of interesting people, but I at least got to direct them and have an idea. It would be a simple idea, but I would have them for a couple hours, direct them, try to come up with a story on the spot. I would have to, interview them, come up with questions. So I was happy at the time because instead of being an intern and getting coffees and doing that kind of stuff, at least I got to learn how to direct talent and learn how to make sure the mic's set up and the lens is right and everything's in focus and how to edit them. Okay. So I did that for a few years, yeah.
What opportunities did you have once you kind of got into filmmaking? Who are some people you worked with?
Early 20s around that time? So early 20s, it was Flaunt Magazine, Malibu Magazine, Vogue Magazine. That was kind of like a little quick part of my life. And then I quickly went into music videos and I was working for all the record labels. So primarily Atlantic, Universal, Capitol. At least did one music video for any of the big record labels. Los Angeles isn't the center of Hollywood, isn't just the center of Hollywood, it's also the center of the music industry. And all the productions are done in LA. So for anyone wanting to get into music videos, maybe less so now, but probably still primarily the music videos are scheduled and shot in Los Angeles. And so all the big music videos you see, it's the same network of people doing all those music videos, So it's kind of it's a big network, but it was, at least at that time pre-COVID, it was a group of guys and gals in Los Angeles. They had the personalities where they listen to a lot of music. They're friends with the artists. They're friends with the guys at the record labels. And it's just kind of a group, a niche. Right. And somehow I fell into that niche. And then at that time, all my favorite directors, James Cameron, George Lucas, at that time, they all own their own post-production or visual effect company. And so I realized a lot of my friends were starting production companies. I said, well, I'm going to start a post-production company and a visual effects studio, because that's a sticking point in most productions, because you might film it, but then you get into post and you run into all these problems. So I'm like, all right, let me just do that. So I was doing visual effects for a lot of music videos, and worked for a lot of people there. And then from there was doing personal videography. So after that, I started getting more working with smaller camps. They're called camps. So I was working with Beyonce's camp, which was Parkwood Entertainment. I was filming her every day as she was getting ready for a secret tour that, NDA, $50 million NDA, I had to sign with her, all this stuff. So I'd film her every day. It was right after she had the twins, and it was a secret tour. And it was right after she headlined Coachella. And then turned out that became a documentary, Homecoming, which ended up winning a Grammy and getting bought by Netflix and all this stuff. It kind of turned into a bigger thing than I knew it was going to be. Because literally I was there one day at a studio, just like this studio. And it's her first day back from recovery. And it was kind of a special moment. It was her first time doing a dance practice after having twins. And so, I knew her physical therapist at the time. I knew her dance choreographer because I worked with him on some music videos. And so it was just all of us in the studio. I was the only one with the camera. It was kind of like a quiet kind of moment. And then that ended up being like a whole segment of the documentary, which is kind of cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Did you have a kind of a personal relationship with her, would you say?
It was, so like I had said, I had been shooting a lot of celebrities prior to that. And I was very used to, okay, just go shake their hand, talk to them, make them feel comfortable. I couldn't do that with her, which I was surprised about. That's a different level of celebrity, and I didn't realize that.
So how is she just filming her as a creative individual? Like, how is her energy? How did she kind of develop new ideas, dances, lyrics, things like that?
Yeah, interesting. So what I noticed about songwriters as well, songwriters are people that have a very sensitive, tender heart, but then also have a strong work ethic. And so I have a huge appreciation of songwriters. And I think we have to kind of, as a culture, protect our songwriters. These are like prophets in a way. And so she has that about her. She has a very tender heart. She's very creative. She would learn a dance routine and instantly look better at dance than when we did. I mean, I was there when they were auditioning the dancers, because she has huge dancers. They're flying dancers from all over the world, a lot of New York, all over Europe, everywhere. And they're finding the best dancers on planet Earth, who all they do is dance. And she was a better dancer than even any of them. And then when she sang, the first time I heard her sing was like, I didn't know very many Beyonce songs. It wasn't like my thing. But the first time I heard her sing, it was incredible. So you take someone really strong work ethic, incredible voice, incredible dancer. I mean, it really is like a monumental personality. And I mean, she was talking about stories. Do you know when she got serious about dancing?
No.
This is what she said, when she finally made the decision she was going to be serious about dancing. 4 years old. That's what she said. 4 years old. Yeah. Wow. I don't know if I can share this information. I did sign an NDA or whatever, so I'll be brief on it. But I mean, and she wasn't like joking or trying to be, exaggerating. I mean, she really said that was the point in her life, because she was talking about her kids and if her kids were going to be a dancer. And she's like, at 4 years old, that was when I made the decision that I was going to be serious.
Okay.
And then in her teenage years, she was Destiny's Child, where she worked unbelievable. I mean, same with boy bands, those girl band, boy band things. I mean, they go through camps that are brutal, So her whole life has been a really strenuous work ethic. She was shuffling through a lot of different video people at the time. And so I just happened to make the cut. So she'd have one guy for one day. Okay, I didn't like his vibe. She wouldn't even look, I don't know, it was just like a vibe check.
Yeah.
And then I ended up staying for the whole thing. They invited me on the tour. And then when they invited me on the tour, I was in the hospital because my daughter was being born. So I said, all right, I'm done with sorry, I can't go. Had some friends go, and I'm probably not a tour guy anyways, but then I went and raised my daughter.
Wow.
Which was an interesting thing, because she was such a maternal person in those days, because she had twins, she had Blue Ivy. They're always by her side all day, every day. And so she was very maternal, and then kind of it gave me a reference point when that was over, when the documentary was over, then it was time for me to take care of my little girl.
Yeah, she must have been very inspirational to be around, because that's just like bring your kids to work. Mom's working, and then she would go over and, feed the kids, take care of the kids, entertain the kids.
And of course people have their preconceptions on what they think about a superstar like Beyonce is, but she the same way she's trying to be a superstar in other ways, she's trying to be a superstar mom, it seemed like. So
I mean, that level of person, it doesn't just show up in one area of their life and then disperses in another area. If she was that high of a performer in the studio, I'm sure she was that high of a performer as a mom, as a wife, as a, whatever other her endeavors were.
Yeah.
So she sounds like a very inspirational person that you worked with. Is there anyone that maybe different vibes that you worked with?
Geez, man. I will say, because I didn't sign an NDA for this, so around the same time, I was more or less in the same camp with a couple other guys, but one of them was being Puff Daddy, P. Diddy.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone called him Puffy. And so I was going over to his house frequently. Again, none of the crazy party stuff, none of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'll say is that was enough for me to say, okay, this isn't the world I want to be in. I wasn't someone who listened to hip hop a lot. I wasn't someone who looked up to my rap idols or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was usually one of the only white kids there. I was definitely the only person that didn't really listen to hip hop and have every 3 6 Mafia album and all that kind of stuff. And so being in that environment, I quickly realized that's not where I want to be. That coalesced with working in other music videos, which were getting a lot darker, really dark. And, we see the big, heavy duty music videos that are clearly have a satanic, demonic energy. There's a lot of smaller videos that I was getting booked for that were just like that. So it reached a certain point where I said, I can't do this anymore. Because I would get hired for a job. I would agree to the rate. I would agree to everything. And then I would get the footage and then it would be like, okay, well, no one told me this,
Yeah.
And so how do you make a life off that?
Yeah.
And so I transitioned to commercials, fortunately. And so I was doing, I was having a great time doing commercials. But then like I was telling you, it's like some things were happening in the country. Things were happening in Hollywood. And I feel like I was able to see clearly for the first time. And I was able to see what was going to happen in Hollywood, what's happening now, but I was able to see it a few years ago, see what was going to happen in Hollywood. And I got to pick which side of the fence I wanted to be on.
Right.
Because there's some people still clinging on to Hollywood, just down with the sinking ship. And it is discouraging because some of them are my friends. And I'm like, you can't look 5 years out and see what's happening.
Yeah.
You can't look 10 years out and see where this is going. You're going to cling on to that. You're going to not want to be associated with this thing over here when obviously you're trying to keep your relationships with something that's not going to be here in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, you're describing a new movement outside of Hollywood that's taking place. But if people have made it in Hollywood or their entire identity revolves around making films in Hollywood, it would be hard to separate, even if what they're doing is turning into this evil, very anti-hero-esque storytelling type movies. That's their whole identity though, because Hollywood has the reputation that it does. So it might be very difficult to do what you're doing and step out into the good, more spiritual storytelling.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is, look, we're having an awakening on the planet right now. There's no anyone that wants to deny that is just not paying attention.
Yeah.
We're having an awakening on the planet. And what an awakening is, what does that mean? It's coming out of a dream. We're getting ancient memories. We're getting these memories back. We're remembering what this whole game is about, what we're doing here. We're all remembering this. And that's going to trickle down. I used to have a thing on my Instagram that said, the revolution in Hollywood is going to be bigger than all others. Because you see these little micro revolutions happening in this industry, and that industry, and this and this and that, and politics, whatever. But when it hits Hollywood, it is going to be bigger than all the others because it's going to include all the others. Hollywood's everything. Like when you're a filmmaker, you are everything. I get to have a good conversation with you about a war in Afghanistan. I get to go have a conversation with someone else about the space program. I get to have a conversation with someone else about some legal process. Hollywood's everything. Storytelling is everything because you're trying to tell the story of your people, and your people are everything.
Yeah.
And so I was able to see the writing on the wall even before the collapse started happening in full swing. But I think what's happening is Hollywood can't pivot to an awakening. They don't know how to do that. What's Hollywood going to do? Start making films to awaken people up more? They don't know how to do that.
Right.
That's not what they're designed to do. And so people can point to, well, it's the invention of streaming, and it's the strikes, and it's this, and it's that. It's like, well, those might be the surface level things, but underneath all that is we have a thirst for something really real and really powerful right now. And we're not having that need met very much.
Right.
And so, one of my jobs is to inspire the next generation of filmmakers to look at it that way.
Yeah. What is Hollywood designed to do?
what can I say? I mean, the shallow thing is people say entertainment, but I don't think, entertainment, what's that? It's entrainment. That's what entertainment is. Entrainment.
Surface
distraction.
level. Yeah.
Entertainment is distraction. Mm-hmm. So you're distracting them. What are you doing while you're distracting them?
Influencing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, this awakening that's happening, it's not a recent thing. I mean, we're talking about thousands of years working our way up to this awakening that's happening right now. Mm-hmm. So we even went over Shakespeare. Okay. Well, Shakespeare's the sacred author in all of Hollywood. Okay. But if you look at the time he came in at, we would do like rites of passage, mystery plays, which were supposed to enliven courage in the folk, in the people. People would be the actors and they would act out these plays. But when this was under Queen Elizabeth, when this English language was becoming dominant and these theaters were becoming kind of institutionalized, what these plays were doing all of a sudden was they weren't inspiring people. Everything ended in demise and collapse, even back in Shakespeare.
Right.
So instead of a story about sacred marriage ending in the birth of a child, that's what that's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
The archetype of a sacred marriage will end in the birth of a child in a new lineage. That's the whole reason we do it. That's the whole reason we have that story.
And how does Romeo and Juliet end? They both kill themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So how discouraged are you going to be as a population if every one of those theaters, every one of those things we consider holy and sacred and the most brilliant writing in the English language, every one of them ends in demise, collapse, discouragement, every single one of them.
That's what I mean. It's entertainment at surface level, but especially these days, people are spending 8, 10, 12 hours a day on their phone consuming some sort of media. A lot of that is Netflix. A lot of that is movies. So like you're saying, if a lot of them are very evil, demonic, anti-hero type films, what does the impact have on a culture, or what is the impact on a culture?
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to have to start with this new generation starting out young too, and kind of rebuild these things. And that's why I think a lot of it's going to come back to us through our memory. We're going to remember these things, because what archetype is, it's, what's the word? Mnemonic. It's a memory device, that's a device used to trigger memory. So that's what archetypes and mythology is supposed to be. And I differentiate a bit between viral content and mythology. So, making a podcast or making a piece of Instagram social media content, that's not a full circle mythology. It's fractals. You can just do fractals. You can tell a little bit about this, a little bit of that. A mythology has to have a full circle, because what a story is, and we learned this, thank God for the hero's journey and Christopher Vogler, who did the work on that. I met him one time, and I think we're all indebted to him because he did that hard work. But it's the mythology, storytelling, mythology, the hero's journey. It's about going from ignorance to awareness. That's all it is. So it's the psychological process that takes place in our minds when we start out in ignorance and we go to awareness. So it's supposed to be a spiral upwards. But what they've done is they've created a loop. So instead of a spiral, you just create a loop. So you start out so you end up discouraged. You end up, revenge plot type thing. You end up in this lower place, so that rather than spiraling upwards, you just go around in a loop.
Right.
But so anyways, yeah. So I differentiate. People are into funding these YouTube videos and social media things, but we still, as a culture, we still need our bedrock mythology stories. We still need those, even if the industry is now, YouTube is competing with Netflix and all these things. So, but we still need these big mythic bedrock stories.
So how do you mentioned, like these new narratives that are coming out, the first thing that comes to mind is AI created content and, the viral virus type of content. How do you think this affects culture moving forward? What mythologies are we writing today that will show up when younger generations are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s? AI on a positive sense has the ability to, AI can do this thing where it can really tap into the field, and if it's programmed the right way, it can really do some pretty phenomenal things. But what it can't do is it can't go through the human heart. So when you watch a movie, you feel those tugs on your heartstring. Okay. The writer felt those tugs on his heartstrings too, probably more than you did. And he put that in, and that's what you're resonating to. AI is not going to do that. It might fascinate. It might
It might entertain, it might do these things, but it's not going to replicate that deep pain in your heart. Working side by side with a writer, there might be a collaborative method. There's going to be a collaborative method, but it's not like when you're writing a good project, you really have to go deep within yourself. Francis Ford Coppola talked about this when he was making Gardens of Stone. He was talking about, during Apocalypse Now, I became rabid and insane. I became this kernel that I was trying to depict in Apocalypse Now. It's like I was writing Gardens of Stone about this father that loses his son. And while I was creating that, my son died. So I lost my son while I'm making this film about a father losing a son. I knew how to finish the film. When you are approaching it the right way, a film, a story is going to go so deep into your psyche, so deep into your heart. And that's what's going to resonate with people. So AI it's going to amplify things. It's going to amplify what the writer's going to try to do. But what the studios are doing now, what they're going to continue to do is they're going to try to use AI as an end all be all, prompt it away, plug it in, and try to create something that's going to entertain people, something that people pay for. And I think part of me thinks that there's going to be an audience for that. Probably there's probably going to be an audience for that.
Yeah,
but it's not going to replace. Look, what's happening? We are about to enter the best 100 years of filmmaking ever. I mean, the last 100 years, not so good. I mean, we have some great films, and people aren't going to like that. But past 100 years isn't scratching the surface of what we're able to do. I think probably have 100 years left of filmmaking. After 100 years, I don't think people are going to watch movies anymore. I think this is our last 100 years. But we're going to see incredible, unbelievable films. People are going to have experiences in theaters that they didn't even know were possible because of what's going on with Hollywood right now. But on the flip side of that, you're going to see all this AI generated that's probably going to entrain people and distract people, entertain people. There's probably going to be an audience for it, but it's not going to be the same thing as what's happening with we're seeing a bifurcation in society right now. And there's going to be an audience that's really hungry for something in the heart. They're going to want to resonate and feel something.
Yeah, you mentioned to me earlier, there's these very negative, I keep saying anti-hero type movies. Like just an example is Sinners that came out on Good Friday. Very large budget film, maybe didn't do so well, but you have these smaller.
It did do well, actually.
It did do well,
yeah.
Okay.
It did very well, yeah.
But on the other hand, you have these, smaller budget films with a very positive message doing just as well, if not better. Why do you think that is? Is that kind of awakening happening?
Yeah, I think that there's an unmet need in the audience for sure. There's an unmet need. So that's why I encourage filmmakers, if you just do what Hollywood can't do, Hollywood is good at sentiment. They're good at making a sad story and doing this and doing that. But that's not the only archetype we need. We need the courage archetype. We need the hero archetype. Like, we need the divine feminine archetype. Like those are the archetypes that are missing in our society and are not going to be told through Hollywood, So we need to focus on those. We need to focus on courage, and we need to focus on these the courageous character in Hollywood is probably like going to be a guy on a revenge plot, and he's going to do this, and then he goes crazy while he's doing this. I mean, can I just say, when I was, I'm not going to name drop actual films. But in film school, they tell you this is a really good film by a really good director. And I would sit there and I would be like, okay, well, I don't want to be in film then. That was like the most horrible experience of my life, watching that horrifying film.
Right.
And they do a good job of encouraging these kind of like sadistic, nihilistic, overly violent, horrible films. And then you get told that that's what it is. And then the other thing that happens when you go to film school, what do? You watch 1,000 films. So now you got the mind virus inside you, and now you go out and try to write a film. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to write the mind virus film that you just watched 1,000 versions of. Yeah. So it's going to take a little bit of like separating the mind a little bit. Got to have like a little bit of an awakening. And I'm hoping to talk to some filmmakers out there, because they're going to be knowing what I'm talking about. Like these young filmmakers that aren't feeling like they're watching movies that they want to watch. Like you got to separate yourself. You got to be distinct. You got to like step outside the box and then do the work to learn the archetypes yourself. You can read a book a little bit, but that's not going to help you. You got to learn, you got to live it out. You have to live the hero's journey that you're going to be portraying in your film. You actually have to live that in your real life. You can't cheat it. I mean, the whole story of the Hollywood director with 17 girlfriends and 18 divorces and this, and he's going to go write out a good love story. No, he's not. He's not going to write a good love story. He doesn't know how. You have to like live the hero archetype that you're trying to portray.
Where do you think this narrative has come from that's kind of washed that classic archetype narrative? Like, where do you think it's coming from?
I mean, it's been in film the whole time, but let's just say, you know, whatever the...
Because it sounds malicious. That's why I'm asking. It sounds malicious.
There's politics and there's governance, you know, it's coming from the governance, you know. I don't... you know, we can know it by its fruit, I would say. Like, we can understand it by its fruit. And it's not, you know, people talk about the woke thing going into Hollywood, and what it's like, that's just a recent version of it. But, you know, you can go back to films in the 1940s. I'm a big fan of Frank Capra. I liked his films. He wrote a great book that was a big inspiration to me called The Name Above the Title. But even films back then, the 1940s thing, that's when you really you got introduced to the black film, the film noir. And that's when you're really plugging society in. Because you think about it, back then, we think of like the picturesque 1950s, 1940s America, Norman Rockwell stuff. Well, they were really pushing some horrifying ideas into the culture with film noir, you know? And we love film noir. We look at, that's like the best subject in film school, is studying film noir and how great these films are. They were plugging some really bad stuff in back then. So it's not something that just happened right now. So I'm saying this awakening that's happened, it's taken hundreds, thousands of years to get to this point.
So maybe it's not malicious, but these kind of films do better. And as history is progressing, that's just kind of being ingrained into our culture.
I don't think it's a matter of them doing better. I think the message is more important than the finances. I don't think it's a financial thing. But I mean, if you only fed people McDonald's, they would tell you they love chicken nuggets.
Right.
They've never had a steak before. Right. So that's Hollywood.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, let's get into your film a little bit. That was a great lesson on Hollywood and the history of film, and I just learned a lot. So you're definitely qualified. But let's talk about your film, Abbey. What does the name Abbey mean?
You know, first of all, I think it's our job as filmmakers to tell the story of our people. That's our job. If I had like a creed to live by, it's tell the story of our people. And so you're looking for what I call watershed moments. A watershed is when all the rivers of a mountain converge into one major river. That's a watershed. To me, Abbey was a watershed moment. You had 20 years worth of war, you had politics, you had deaths, you had culture, you had civil war in Afghanistan, all converging into a chain-linked fence called Abbey. So, I mean, that's what Abbey is, and that's what I wanted to focus on, and that's why I wanted to name it that film, because I never want to take my eyes off the fact that that's what this film's about. And
just for anyone who doesn't know, just explain that event briefly.
Yeah. So in Afghanistan, 20 years, it was apparent to people like yourself, people in the front lines in Afghanistan, that the Afghan army wasn't going to be able to protect itself. It wasn't going to be able to hold. We can give them all the firepower in the world, and they're not going to be able to hold a Taliban army that is ruthless, that can hide in mountains, that is never going to give up, that has overcome unbelievable adversity, if you look at it that way. The amount of deaths they've had to go through, it was not going to hold. And that message was not relayed to the American public at all. I would say maybe even the opposite of that message was relayed to the American people.
Yeah, I would agree.
And so people like yourself could see the writing on the wall. The rest of us couldn't. And this kind of blind hope that the Afghan army was going to be able to hold its own and keep the culture going. I mean, women could go to school at that time because of America. Women were in the streets at that time because of America. People don't realize that. My wife was in Afghanistan. She got an education because of America. America didn't go in. She wouldn't know how to read, you know? And I think that gets lost too, you know, and that's part of what our film gets into. But the withdrawal effort did not follow what we would think would be a sensible protocol. And it was kind of a worst of a worst situation. Taliban took over the capital, they took over Kabul, and they were able to very easily overtake the Afghan army, who probably didn't have much of a will to fight, considering they don't have air support. They don't have any things they were trained to use. And you had hysterical, panicked citizens of Afghanistan, knowing that the people that were just bombing the hospitals and the schools over the past couple of years are now going to be your police officers. And that was a terrifying thought. And so there was a lot of panic, and a lot of people got smashed into a very small area to try to get onto a cargo plane and out of the country.
Yeah, part of my experience with being over there, which is part of why I brought you on, when I figured out who you are through our mutual friend, I said I was there during that time, and you're creating a film around this. So I just wanted to kind of explain my perspective for you and anyone listening. I was part of 10th Special Forces Group, one of the last companies, or the last company that was there in Afghanistan in 2021. We left at the end of. Part of our job was to, well, backing up a little bit, we deployed not really knowing if we were going to be conducting missions or retrograding and packing up Afghanistan to come home, which we also didn't really know what meant either. So we were really just deploying kind of blind. Then about 2 months into it, the administration at the time, Biden administration, said we were going to withdraw. So up until that 2 months, we really hadn't done a whole lot. We were still kind of supporting and advising. After that call to withdraw from Afghanistan, we had to start separating from our allies there, which was interesting. And I had to essentially release them from their duty. And that was a very emotional, risky conversation to have.
So they're going to go back home. They have no protection. Their neighbors could turn them in. Their family could turn them in. 100%. Taliban could already know their names.
100%. Yep. So I had to sit down, just like we are right now, and explain, like, through an interpreter, I really appreciate what you've done over the last 15, sometimes 18 years. Some of these guys, battle scars, partial amputations, they were, battle hardened individuals. And I had to sit there and explain to them that we were leaving. And once you leave this base today, you're no longer authorized to come on here. And that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I'm 32. That was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Wow.
Because these were grown men with wives, with children, who believed in the cause. They believed why we were there, America, why we were there. And yeah, we just let them go. And I felt like I was doing the dirty work of an administration, and I didn't want to. I felt, because I wasn't working with them. I was only in Afghanistan once as special forces, and we didn't do any kinetic operations. I was there just for the close down. So these guys had been in war with special forces for decades. And all my brothers who came before me were working with them, and were in gunfights with them, and, running into IEDs with them in multi-day firefights. And I wasn't a part of that, but I had to sit here and say we were leaving. And that was so hard for me to do, because I didn't feel like I didn't earn their respect, because I wasn't out fighting for the good cause with them, but I was sitting here telling them that we were no longer going to support them. And I've never really talked about this, but this is for sure the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I just feel like, as I don't really know who's responsible for this, but we did not do them the service that they deserved, because, as we all know, 6 days after the last U.S. plane left, Taliban was in charge, and they were parading our equipment around on CNN, on Fox, everywhere, with huge Taliban flags flying where American flags used to be. And I know that, I could pretty confidently say that all of those good-hearted Afghan nationals that wanted to see, the U.S. prevail over there, and this change in culture happen, they're dead. They died. They're for sure dead. And I'm probably one of the last people that they saw from the American side. And that does not sit well with me when I lay down at night.
Did they have a sense like, okay, Afghanistan is over? When they could kind of see, okay, there's no future for Afghanistan outside of the Taliban?
It was an interesting conversation, because some of them were quick. Some of them were going to just, thank you, and they were going to flee the country.
Right.
But a lot of them, owned property, had a house. Like, there's one guy, I can't name names or even describe him, but, he was taking care of his mother, father, and one of their parents. So one side of the grandparents. And he had a child with one on the way. And he was the only one working in that house. because the father had gotten injured or something, couldn't farm anymore, but he was the breadwinner for that home. I got a text message on WhatsApp while I was still there that he had been shot and killed after I said bye to him. That was really hard.
And then think about the family. I mean, worst case, I don't want to say it about him, but worst case, the mom gets sold off, the kids get sold off. I mean, that's the worst case.
Yeah, that was days after I told him that we were leaving. And wow. I was really close with this guy. We did a lot of training as a medic. I was teaching him med training. A lot of our Bravos, like we had them on the range. They were shooting. They were doing all kinds of stuff with us. And like I said, we were never out in firefights with them, but Green Berets before me had been out with them. And I was the one who had to say bye. And then he gets killed, probably taken for everything he had. Wife, pregnant, child, parents, grandparents. I have no clue what happened to them. But I know that guy had a good heart. He wanted the best for his country and he was fighting for it. And those people, you know, the good didn't make it.
Wow.
Yeah. Tough situation.
It's a tough situation for the people that trusted the US and joined. I mean, it's tough enough for the citizens. You know, people talk about it, well, it's kind of a safe country now. I mean, the truth is the women are under house arrest. Unless they're going to go out and get married, they can't leave the house. That's not as bad as the people who serve the US, put their lives on the line during that time, but then...
Yeah. Your kind of analogy of, you know, painting ugly as beautiful and then evil as good. You know, those people who worked with the US the last 20 years are now the evil ones because Taliban are in charge. And
right.
If you have any flavor of US on you,
right.
you're dead.
Right.
So now we have evidence of a nation where evil is now good and good has become evil.
Right.
That's really scary to think about.
Wow.
Tell me more. Let's get into the film specifically. You know, It's around an Afghan woman who escapes in 2021 through Abbey Gate. Yeah.
I mean, what I'll say is it's definitely a hero story. It's an action romance, favorite genre. We used to make a lot of really great romance films in the 90s. That genre kind of went away and kind of devolved into romantic comedies and whatever, but really good romance films. There's some in the 90s. But it's heavy duty action and heavy duty romance. And it's kind of that idea of the sacred marriage. I won't give away too much of the plot, but you know, my wife escaped Afghanistan, went through Abbey Gate, slept in the refugee camps, came to America knowing nothing, had to learn English. And I had been writing the script. It goes back to that story about, you know, when you're really, really deep into a story, when you're not just trying to entertain and not even just trying to convey some emotion, when you're really trying to diagnose the soul's architecture, when you're really getting in deep, the film and your life kind of overlap and become intertwined. And that happened to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm writing the story about an American that falls in love with an Afghan, and then I end up meeting this girl. And so I quickly I gave her my contact information. I said, please just give me a call. I just want to ask you some questions because I was doing a lot of research on the military side, so I can get the US side, but I can't get a female Afghan side. Hey, what was your experience like? There's no documentaries for that. And so I got her information, got to know her. We fell in love. Of course, while I'm writing the story about two people falling in love, I'm falling in love. And then the day, finished the script. 8:30, I sent it off to Angel Studios because we were already involved with them. They already wanted to do the film. Sent off 8:30. 9:15, my wife and I were in the courthouse getting married.
Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't time it that way. You know, it just happens. So as soon as the script was done, we got married. But yeah, I'm not going to give away plot, but it's heavy duty stunts, heavy duty action. I mean, Tom Cruise is getting up there. We need a new Tom Cruise. We need someone else who's going to be able to do these heavy duty stunts. Mm-hmm. Might even be a guy coming from the military, you know? Yeah. Military make the best stunt people. But a lot of stunts, a lot of incredible romance. And we just did as much due diligence as we could. Talked to a lot of Afghan refugees, had a lot of good special forces advisors. Had a lot of veterans advise, Afghan soldiers, talked to a lot of them. We're using one life story in the film. And so we feel like we convey the story. I think it's an incredible film. I don't think any film like this has ever been made. We made the short film last year. That got us with Angel Studios. We passed their whole guild thing because they made Sound of Freedom, and I had already seen a film like Sound of Freedom coming.
Mhm.
I could already predict that something like that was going to happen. And then that happened. And I actually thought I was going to be the one to do the film first, and then Sound of Freedom coming. Oh, they did what I was thinking was going to come.
Mhm.
And then I said, okay, well, what's this Angel Studios? I knew a little bit. I knew that The Chosen, and then saw their deal, talked to them, went through a whole process with them, got to meet them. So they're in line to distribute. And so we're getting ready to enter production. So that's basically what we're lined up for.
What motivated you to go with this storyline?
I'd wanted to do something in the military. I just thought that was, a lot of times military guys get bad raps. You talk about Beauty and the Beast, right? So the guy that our film's almost Beauty and the Beast, but reversed, because Gustan, who's, people remember the kids movie, he's the war hero. He's in love with a girl. He could get any girl in the whole village, but he doesn't want to. He only wants this one girl. And what does he want to do? He wants to start a family with her. And he's the bad guy. Like, what is happening?
Right.
And then the guy that's a beast that kidnaps her and traps her and is this hideous monster. And beast is usually a symbol of, sin, lust, addiction. He has got all the entertainment. He's got all the distraction. He's got all the books. He's got all the food. He's got all the castle. He's keeping her locked in. He's the good guy, you know? So you think about reversing that. Well, I always knew that I wanted to do a film where the war hero is the hero, And then, so I always knew this thing. And then when the Abbey thing happened, I was one of the citizens that just could not, I couldn't make sense of what had happened. And so I was already on a path of research and figuring out what had happened before I realized this could be a film. And then, did the short film and then started working on the feature.
Yeah. Which the short film is in the description of the video. It's like a 2-minute short film.
10-minute. Trailer's 2 minutes.
I haven't seen the full short film then.
Yep, 10 minutes.
Man, I got to go watch it real quick.
Yeah.
The trailer is amazing, so I really have to watch that. Both are in the description. How is that process creating it? Like both the research, development, script writing, and then actually shooting that short film?
I was trying to do something different, and like I said, I kind of had to become the hero that I was trying to write a little bit. With a short film, what I'll say is like it's difficult to use a short film to develop character, so I wasn't able to develop as much character as I wanted to, have as many good dialogue scenes as I wanted to. So now that we've done the feature, it's just like, oh my gosh, we don't even touch all the great scenes that we have in this feature. But yeah, we had Paul Toma, who's a 14-year Navy SEAL. He provided, we couldn't have done it without him. So he was like my producing partner. He brought in a lot of his veteran friends, a lot of people. He works in Hollywood too. He's very successful in Hollywood, and we kind of partnered up together to work on it. I had my wife helping. She brought in she got so much. Even the short film, those are like real events that happen. Like that story is like her story. I don't want to give too much away, but she was able to bring to life this character that we were trying to portray. So yeah, it's just a short film. It's just a taste. It's not the whole thing. So we're so focused on the feature right now. It's just like, even going back and watching it, I'm happy with what it was, but going back and watching it, it's just like, oh my gosh, you can't really get into, some people say short films are harder than feature films. I think Chris Nolan said that. It's like, there's a truth to that. It's not that it's more work, it's less work, but it's harder to tell a full story. It is harder to tell a full story in a short film.
Well, let's tie in your film and the current state of Hollywood. How do you hope to impact the future of film production with this specific movie?
Yeah, Hollywood, everyone can see it's kind of collapsing right now. So, I'm going to just kind of put my thoughts out there. I think the future is probably going to be smaller studios. I think Angel Studios is going to be a big part of the future. I think $300 million films we're going to see less of. I think independent financing is going to be the future. I think the only thing that's changing right now with this whole Hollywood landscape, the only thing that's changing right now is who's writing the checks. Studios were writing the checks. Now independent financiers are going to be writing the checks. Everything else stays the same. No one on set's going to know the difference. And so I think it's kind of nice because the people that are the craftsmen are probably going to be okay. It's tough right now because everyone's kind of in a freeze and some people don't know this outside the industry, but the industry is really slow, really slow. Actors are suffering. Everyone's suffering. Unions, everything's suffering. But I think it's the birth pains of the future. Studios aren't going to like me saying this, but yeah, I think the future is going to be smaller studios. I think it's not going to be centralized. I think LA is collapsing under its own weight. Unfortunately, I love the landscape of LA. I fell in love with that city. I lived there 14 years. But it was built on a lot of lies and it's having a reckoning, between the protests and the fires and this and the collapse and the economics and everything. It's really having a tough time. It's heartbreaking. I hate it. But I think there'll probably be a new Hollywood that'll be different, more balanced. I think everything's going to be more decentralized, spread throughout the country. And I think we're going to have to find more containers for this awakening that's happening, more containers for the wisdom that people are looking for right now. But we also have to do the work and find those things. They're not written anywhere. We have to find them ourselves. So people point to the technology, the streaming, the changes, the short form content, social media, all this stuff. But there's a deeper underlying thing, and so the most important thing we can do right now is raise up a new crop of filmmakers. If we can do that, then we're set. So, like I said, I didn't have a great time in film school because they just show you how to do the same thing that's been done forever. So you don't have to be a film school graduate, but it takes a lot of work to learn how to tell a story. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work. So, but it's an emotional journey. It's an emotional work. It's the hero's journey, the writer's journey. You have to go through that yourself. And so that's what we need. We need soldiers to do that. We need soldiers to go through those journeys and come back with the elixir on the other side. But I just don't, encourage people not to get cynical. Don't have nihilistic endings. It's kind of cheaper and easier to sell a movie about a porn star who marries this guy and they do this and they kill everybody at the end. It's really easy to do those, really easy to get people's attention. But those are just little dust in the wind. But to really go deep and to find out what it is we are as humans, we talked about the sacred marriage archetype. There's a lot of archetypes like that you can look into. The orphan type, the orphan who becomes king, right? The commoner who becomes king. Great archetype. There's all these great mythic archetypes we've carried with us thousands of years, and just somehow they just went away. 100 years, they just disappeared. They just disappeared magically. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of resurgence, bringing back these archetypes and these mythic stories.
So if Hollywood, let me see if I can explain this, because you've kind of painted a new picture of Hollywood for me. If Hollywood's job is to kind of control thought, and in recent times it's been very cynical, negative, anti-hero type themes and plots, bad endings versus good endings. If we as a society or a culture no longer want that,
right, like
this kind of awakening that's happening is what you're saying, that is what's kind of causing this collapse of Hollywood. Is that right? Or
as above, so below. So it's, there's the physical, technology is an extension of consciousness. So as our consciousness grows, so does technology. So you can say it's because of streaming, you can say it's because of short form content, you can say it's because of AI, but I would say it's all interrelated. But the struggle that Hollywood is having to pivot to what people want is probably going to be the nail, the Achilles heel in that situation.
And what are you saying people are wanting more of?
They don't want to be discouraged right now.
Right. Inspired.
They don't want to be discouraged. They want to root for a hero who's fighting for a cause. It doesn't matter if it's a lost cause, but as long as they're fighting for something, I think that's what people want. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I have this idea, news and politics is so prevalent right now. And I feel like everywhere I go, it's like, oh, did you hear about this horrible thing in this place, or this negative thing in this other place? And I'm just like, I don't watch the news. I have one TV in my house. I use it for guided meditations and watching documentaries. I don't watch the news at all. And so when people tell me these things, it just seems so simple. I'm like, if something was causing this much distraught and anger in my life, I would just get rid of it. So why do you continue to feed into this machine? Because news agencies are fueled by viewers, right? So if there's millions and millions and millions of people watching these news stations every single day, and it's because they're feeding them more and more bad events, catastrophic events, which is in reality probably a small percentage of what's actually going on in the world, we could change it if we just stopped watching it.
Right.
And I don't think it's that simple because, you know, you have the fear of missing out. That's kind of what runs news agencies, FOMO. But we really could just all stop watching it and it would stop happening. They would stop feeding this negative narrative. And if we all said, like in Hollywood, you're saying, if we wanted, you know, I want the inspirational stories and I'm not going to watch your station unless I'm getting at least more than 50% good news. Because right now I'd say it's maybe a 90-10 split of negative to positive. So what's stopping us all as a society, as a group, from just kind of, you know, going on strike against negative news or negative films? That's kind of what you're saying we need to do. Yeah.
I mean, what you pay attention to magnifies. And so I think there's an awareness element that's also happening right now. We're becoming aware. That's not really being mainstream news. It's not getting covered in the mainstream news, but there is we're getting a lot of awareness of some darkness in our culture, and that's healthy. But yeah, you know, and then they say soul follows story. So the stories that are the building block of your life, the films you grew up on, the films that you watched, that becomes your soul will follow that. So yeah, you use the word inspirational, and I think that can kind of come out as like a little bit like cheesy, almost like inspirational films. You think of Hallmark films or something like that. But I know what you're saying. But I would say it's like almost like films that are congruent with the human spirit or something. I mean, it's like films that match the human soul. Rather than fighting against it, rather than something that's inverting it, rather than something that's kind of trying to pervert it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I'm really spun up on like why this has happened. Like, why are we so spun up around negativity, both in the news or in Hollywood or whatever it is? It's like people just want to be negative. I did a recent episode with a psychology professor, and he talked about cognitive biases, and we specifically talked about negativity bias, which kind of comes from, you know, at some point in our life, we all have a story, right? Like we all have a traumatic event, whether it was a breakup that changed your life or a death that changed your life or an injury that changed your perspective on the world. Like we all have this trauma. And once we experience trauma, it's almost human nature to think that we'll get more trauma. Like I was broken up with, or someone divorced me, or my best friend died, or something along those lines. We think that will continue to happen. So maybe it's like this negativity bias is kind of feeding into the entertainment that we have, both in news and in movies. And we just want more of it because it's what we think is supposed to happen, because we've all been traumatized at some point in our life.
Right. I mean, I think you're right. And it's one thing to kind of understand it like in a shallow sense, but then to apply it and understand it in movies. You know, one film that we would watch in film school is Taxi Driver. And that's considered one of the greatest films of all time. But I watched it and I was horrified because I was 15 years old and I want to be a filmmaker. And someone told me, hey, watch this film. If you want to be a filmmaker, you got to see this film. And it's what you're talking about, you know. Maybe there's good intentions behind the writers and the team, and you know, I'm sure they did a great job. I don't want to criticize the artwork,
right? But
it was a perverse environment, and then the hero becomes perverted, and then he goes crazy, and then he kills everybody, and then he dies. It's like, okay, we know that story. That's the story we've had shoved down our throat forever. What I would say is, how about a story where a person is in a corrupt environment? What if he has to pull something out of himself that's pure in the middle of a really corrupt environment, a really hard place? That's kind of what our film's about too. A really hard place, someone in a really hard position. And what if instead of killing everybody, what if he does something really noble, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the harder stories to tell.
So let me ask you this. This is a very real question. Do you think, you know, we're talking about news and movies and just people are attracted to the negative, anti-hero, catastrophic news. Is it possible to shift culture into a positive light with film? Are people even going to want happy endings anymore?
Well, again, yeah. So when you say happy endings, that goes back to kind of the idea of Hallmark kind of inspirational. We've kind of like put that in a bucket like that. We've gotten a really cheap version of it. So we don't even know what that looks like. That's why I was saying this next 100 years are going to be films you didn't even know were possible, because we've only gotten the McDonald's, we haven't gotten the real thousands of years worth of ancestral heritage written into a film. So it's not about a happy ending, but it's about the transition. You started out in ignorance and you went on this journey, and by the end of it, you learned something. You acquired wisdom. And that same wisdom you acquired is the same wisdom that's needed to cure your culture. That's why it's called the elixir. Hero at the end, he brings back the wisdom to it, or the elixir, to his kingdom, and it restores the kingdom. It restores the culture. And so it's not about happy endings, or, you know, I don't think of it that way, but it will reach the people that are ready for it. You know, the right films are going to reach the people that are ready. Not everyone, maybe not everyone's kind of there, but the people that are ready, the people that are already awake, people are on the verge of awaking, they're going to find it, and it's going to resonate with them in a way that no other film could. One good film is going to cancel out 1,000 bad ones. You know, one good film.
That powerful, you think?
Yeah.
Do you think there's a spiritual battle going on? I know you're a religious man. So what do you think religion or spirituality has to do with kind of what's going on in Hollywood or just media in general?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. My wife's Muslim and I was raised Christian. We pray together 3 times a day. We don't need, you know, it's not praying to different gods. So, you know, I'm not like religious in like a specific thing. I think, you know, prayer is really powerful, really powerful. Meditation is too. I think prayer is really powerful. And when you're getting into these deep archetypes, you're dealing with spiritual things. So you almost have to have a kind of a strong spirit at the same time. You have to be strong in spirit. So spiritual war, yeah. I mean, I try not to even look at the polarity of it, the duality of it. You know, I think I probably try not to. And sometimes you see a film that maybe I'm not a big fan of, but it kind of teaches, oh, I could do something differently. Oh, they did it this way, but what if we did a little different? So I try not to look at it as like a negative, harmful thing. Just all lessons that we're learning. But yeah, I think we need probably more prayer as a culture, you know, whatever that is for people.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out, like, also, what do you mean by awake? Like people who have, you know, become, you know, awakened versus people who aren't ready and maybe aren't. What do you kind of mean by that?
I think that there's an energy source in our heart that causes it to beat. We don't have a name for that energy source scientifically. There's not a word. We don't know what energy makes a seed grow. We don't know what it's called. We know it's something. We don't have a device to measure it. Let's call that source. You got to be lined up with that thing that makes your heart beat. You got to be real close to that thing. You got to be real synced up with that. And I think what happens is, you know, you get in your mind is deceived. You start getting confused of what the emotions are. Well, is this a desire? Blah, blah, blah. You gotta really get to know what's in here. And then that's what directs you. So when I say awaken, maybe I mean like, you know, people that have had that experience. I had an experience like that. You know, trauma is a memory suppressor. When you go through a traumatic incident, your memory goes down, but it's also an awakener. You can go through a traumatic incident that's so severe that it awakens all these memories. You know, I had that experience. I went through a traumatic incident where I just learned a lot in a very short amount of time. So I think I had an experience like that, but yeah.
I like the word source. This quote that I read at the beginning, it was kind of my response to a book I read. Do you know who Rick Rubin is?
Of course, yeah.
So The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. I read that book a couple times at this point because I just kind of skimmed back. Each chapter, like if you read that book, can change your life. The chapters are only like 2 to 3 pages, double spaced, big font, and it's just like every sentence is just supposed to be there, and every chapter is just fit perfectly into this story that is like 350 pages. And I read that book, and that quote is my kind of response to that book. I literally wrote a note in there. I was like, what is going on at this point? I just had to reframe it. That's what I came up with. And I think that quote was a good summary of what that book is. But in that book, he talks about source energy, which is what we tap into to create. So kind of what you're explaining, do you think there's a correlation between this source energy and creativity? Like, do you feel that when you're, maybe writing the screenplay or filming somebody or editing, do you feel like you're tapping into some kind of source energy?
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think emotions can sometimes be a gateway. I feel like I went through a lot of like devastating experiences during the writing of this, just in my life. And those were the times I wrote the best scenes. If you find the best scenes in the film, it's because I was going through something devastating. So deep emotions can trigger that kind of releasing the mind and just really going deep. It's kind of why, like, growing up, I listened to like a lot of sad songs, and I was wondering, why am I always listening to kind of like downbeat sad songs? But it was just because it kind of triggered my heart a little bit, and I just wanted to sit in there. I wanted to sit in my heart a little bit. And so sadness can do that, but also courage, righteous anger. I think righteous anger is really important. People probably felt righteous anger about the Afghanistan. It's like you can find those emotions. I think emotions can be a gateway to that source,
Mm-hmm.
Sacred emotions.
Mm-hmm. So other than emotions, like if you were sitting down to maybe write the screenplay and you just weren't feeling it, is there anything?
I won't write.
Oh, really?
No question.
Okay. Because I was going to ask, is there anything that sparks that?
Well, for me, there's a story in the Bible. There's like a bath, like a pool of water. People are sitting around, sick people gather around the water. And every once in a while, the water will ripple.
Mm.
And the idea is that an angel just troubled the water. An angel troubled the water. Now the water's holy, and the first person to go into the water is going to be healed.
Mm.
For me, it's just that. If an angel's troubling the water, I'll go right. Doesn't matter how long, doesn't matter what I'm doing, I will go right and right. But I can't write on command for me. Some people write every day out of habit. I get it. There was one day I forced myself to write, and I wrote 14 pages, which is a lot. I mean, for me, that's like a lot. Came back the next day and threw away all 14 pages.
Really?
I never did that again because I just pushed it. And there's such a discipline. What's the whole culture right now is very focused on masculine control, kind of like you can control everything, control your bank account, control this, do more sales reps, do this, and there's not enough silence. Silence is very important. I think that's what I learned most of all, is that silence is where you're going to get all the information you need.
Mm. And you do that through prayer, it sounds like. Or is it different?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a word for it, but prayer for me, if we're going to get specific about it, usually I'm praying with someone, say like me and my wife having some kind of trouble, some kind of concern. Hey, get over here, let's pray. And we clearly tell the universe, tell God what we want. And law of attraction kicks in, our belief kicks in, maybe source kicks in, but we become very focused on what it is we want. We know what we want. That's what prayer is to me.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not praying to myself in my own head. I'm probably not doing that.
Right.
But silence, it's because, it's feelings. It's feelings more than words. And prayer sounds more like words. So it's just like feeling the stillness, feeling the silence.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I was telling you at breakfast, I meditate every morning, every evening, most of the time with my partner. And like you're saying, that connection while you're doing it together, it's more powerful because our eyes are closed, we're not touching, but I can feel her presence, and I'm sure you can feel your wife's presence. And through that, it's kind of like this bond that's forming silently, but in like another dimension almost. I don't know. It's very interesting.
Well, have you seen the aura photographs? If you take a picture of someone's aura, I don't even know how it works, but it's been around like 100 years something. You might have a green aura. This person over here might have purple aura. Mm. As soon as you start interacting, you create like a red aura. It will be like a completely wildly different color.
Interesting.
So the energy, it's chemistry, it's not just one and one. You're creating a whole new vibration. That's more than just the sum of those vibrations. It's a whole new thing.
Yeah.
But people talk about having chemistry with people, you're creating a different vibration.
Yeah. Yeah. I asked you, if anything kind of sparks your creative interest. I have this theory right now. There's a mental health crisis, going across the world, I feel like. And I really think it's due to a lack of creativity. Wow. I really think that's the root cause of it. I don't think people are creating enough because we live in a world of abundance. You can literally go on your phone and have anything, watch anything. It's unlimited. So I think if people, especially ones who are struggling, maybe struggled with suicidal ideation, depression, severe anxiety, the solution is being creative. And you can be creative in so many different ways. And I'm sure you can kind of touch on this too, but being creative isn't just painting. It's not just playing music.
Right.
It's learning, you know, like I said in the quote, it's finding joy in the unknown. If I meet someone in public and they say something that I don't know, you know, you can kind of have two routes there. This person made me feel stupid and therefore I'm getting angry, or this person is an opportunity to learn something. And now I've just created knowledge for myself and I've created a relationship with this person. I've created this environment with this stranger. Whereas instead of, you know, this person made me feel stupid and I'm angry, I never want to talk to this person again. It's, hey, I just learned something from you. I greatly appreciate you. Maybe I can, you know, pay it forward somehow. But you can be creative in so many different ways. Learn a new word every single day and try and use it 5 times over the next week. You can create journal entries and you're creating, you know, this database of your days. I don't know if you've ever done journaling, but if you, you know, at the end of every day, just write what you've done. And now you have this database of your last year. Because I don't know about you or anyone listening, but if I think about last year, it's really hard for me to pinpoint like 10, 20, 30 days specifically. Like if I had to explain to you like on a specific day what I did, it'd be hard, right? But we're living every single day. And that thought scared me. So I started doing this journal thing where I just every evening, most days, I'd say 5 out of 7 days of the week, I just write what I've done today. Even if it's as simple as, you know, woke up, made breakfast, shot a podcast episode, sent some emails, made a smoothie that was delicious, hung out with my partner, went to bed. Like it's very anticlimactic, a very, you know, easy day, but it's just documenting those. It makes you more aware, more mindful. And I feel like it slows life down and it makes me less anxious that life is going too fast. But I just, you know, there's so many ways to be creative. And if I could, you know, give advice to anyone struggling, it would just be find ways to be more creative and do less consuming, do more creating rather than consuming. I think that's the answer.
Right. And I do a lot of journaling too. That's been a huge thing for me. And I do a lot of what's called desire mapping. So just writing what it is I want, you know, just being really clear on what I want. I think most people, you grow up in the school system, kind of lose your identity and you don't even know what you want. You don't even know, you know what you're supposed to do, but you don't really know what you want. I think maybe part of the mental health crisis solution is people figuring out what it is they're on this earth to do. You know, like we had some kind of agreement why we're going to come here and what we're here to do. Got to find out what that is. And I think finding out what your desires are helps. Like what it is that you crave, even if there's no money involved, you know, like I'd make films even if I didn't make any money, you know. And there was a while I was kind of caught up in the entrepreneurship and using your bank account as a scoreboard, which a lot of people are talking, you know, a lot of people do. And I had to really let go of that and kind of take on more of an identity of an artist rather than entrepreneur, which is kind of hard for me because I think in our culture right now, entrepreneurs are probably the kings of our culture in a way because they're the ones making the most money. They're the ones we look up to the most. But for me, I had to kind of finally say, you know, I'm going to just going to let myself be an artist for a while. And you think about Beethoven, you know, Mozart, Van Gogh, these people that didn't make a lot of money, really had financial problems. They changed the world. And what would have happened if they watched a podcast on, you got to make this much money or else you're a loser or something, you know, we want to have a Mozart, you know, can you imagine? Yeah. So I think financial abundance comes with alignment. So when you're finding what you want to do, I think that brings in the abundance, but it's not because you're not, I don't think that should be your goal. You know, I think alignment should be goal. Finding what keeps you balanced should be the goal. And then the abundance comes with that. Yeah.
I think you're rewarded by the universe when you pursue your passion and actually tap into what you were put here to do. Cause like I said, it's our job on this earth to contribute to this creative unfolding that's happening. And if we're not doing that, we're not going to be rewarded for it. So you need to find your passion and only then will you be rewarded. And if you're seeking the reward through things you're not passionate about, why would you be rewarded?
Right. And I think there's a scripture in the Gospel of Thomas, which is not in the Bible. It was one of those ones kicked out of the Bible, but it was, if you don't release what is within you will destroy you. And I think that's really true. If you got a big film in you, or if you got something big in you and you suppress it, it's going to destroy you. Yeah.
Do you think the source kind of comes up with ideas and then uses us as tools to create it? Like everyone has, thought of an idea and then you see it happen somewhere else. Like, especially in the film industry or in the music industry, like you think of a film, what was that film you had mentioned? That you said you had thought of and then it happened. What was that?
Sound of Freedom?
Yeah, Sound of Freedom.
Right.
Like you had this idea and then Sound of Freedom comes out. So it's like the universe is ready for this movie, Sound of Freedom, or a story of this theme, and it's going to happen one way or the other. So if you feel it, you have this idea, you have this inspiration, it's your job to make it become a reality, because it's just up there in the ether right now. It's not going to come to reality without, human intervention. How important is that, do you think, to act on inspiration?
I mean, I think we all have very personal jobs, like very personal goals that we have to find. And then when you're lined up, like I know for me, I can see my whole life building up to kind of where I'm at right now. Like I can go down all the years and see how what I'm doing now is lining up with what I was meant to do, all the signs before. So yeah, I mean, does it come from source or do we make that agreement ourselves? I don't know, but I think, separating yourself from the crowd, that's where it goes from silence. All the best prophets, they got their revelations in the desert, in the wilderness. And so I think that silence, that distance from the crowd is what allows you to really find alignment. I think people's vision boards have a lot of cars and houses and bank account money and all planes and all that stuff. And that can really get you in trouble because if your alignment is taking you in a different direction, you want to make sure that you're pursuing like your thing first.
Well, people, like you're saying, in these vision boards, cars, money, houses, if that is our motivation, that can be used against us. And you're saying it does in Hollywood, and I would love for you to get into this, but how would you say actors, actresses, directors, in a way, kind of sell their soul to get the car, the money, the house, and things like that? What's going on in that realm? Because that's a situation where it's being used against you. Right.
Yeah. There's this idea of a pendulum, an energetic pendulum. So I'm going to get into this real quick. Vadim Zealand wrote an incredible book called Transurfing, Reality Transurfing. And it's about manifestation and things like that. And I don't want to say if you love cars and you have a car on your vision board, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but a lot of times it's other people's vision boards that are kind of influencing theirs. But pendulums, it's a kind of an abstract concept, but it's the idea of energetic structures that grow around a certain idea. So, Hollywood's an idea, it can be a pendulum, whatever. And a pendulum draws people in and consumes their energy. And I encourage people to go look at that book if that sounds interesting. But it says that a pendulum's favorite bait is money. So money is the tool that's used to get people off their track, to get people off their path, or he calls it the wave of fortune. You want to find this wave of fortune, which is your unique path. And money is usually what's used to draw people off that. Money is usually the reason people make compromises in their life. With celebrity cultures, I don't know. I mean, I almost don't want to speak too much to that, but it's like,
I guess a different way to reframe it would be, what are the dangers of using tangible rewards as motivation? Like these are things we don't die with, money, cars, houses. I feel like that's a very, if we're talking about a battle of good and evil, that's a very evil way of, very egotistical outlook on life.
Right. And I think that's where it's, important to have your vow to God. I made my vow to God. It's not under any religion, but I made my vow to God, committed my life to him. No one can buy that from me. Doesn't matter. You can try to give me $10 million. I made my vow to God, and maybe having that personal relationship with that source, I think maybe that helps. Because what's unique for me now is I'm not tied to the results. I wrote that screenplay. Even if it never gets made, I changed something in the field. because I completed the thing God told me to do, and now it's a little bit on God's hands too. But I think having really clear conscience, or like a really clear relationship with God, where that, like, that's where you stake your claim to,
Yeah, I like that. Shifting gears a little bit, I would love to ask you about your relationship. Earlier, I had started out with that quote, and I said, we should lean into similarities versus differences, especially with, each other. So how does having differing religions affect your guys' relationship?
It doesn't. I would like to say it doesn't. She's probably more structured than I am. Mm-hmm. But, I was raised Christian. Maybe 1% of the beliefs are different between Christianity and Islam. It's not what they tell us, Mm-hmm. She believes Jesus was born of a virgin, and, all that stuff is like, I didn't learn that in school. I was told, in church, I was told something totally different. I didn't know that they believed Jesus was born of a virgin, all this stuff. So, from a fundamental thing, it's like, I don't know if there's much of a difference. But I'm not really attached to anything. I'm just not attached to anything.
Yeah. We have like two nations, fighting over this.
Oh my God.
Christianity versus Muslim. So I just kind of wanted to hear your perspective. You love
that's a whole different thing, because there was times when Christianity and Islam got along really well and built some pretty incredible things. Mm-hmm. And so, my job is to try to unite Christianity and Islam in a way, try to like bridge the gap, because there's a lot of misunderstanding. I think Christianity has I think they've been very intentionally misled on what Islam is. Incredibly sophisticatedly misled on Islam.
What are some misconceptions?
Islam sees more as Christians as being their brothers. And Christianity thinks very highly of Judaism. Huge differences. One thinks God's son, is Jesus, born of a virgin. The other thinks he was a false prophet, was worthy of death, huge differences. But they figure out how to get along, I never had, my church never had any problem with Judaism. Mm-hmm. Muslims believe Jesus was born of a prophet. It's all up until the dying on the cross situation, where there were some battles going on, the early 300s, 400s, over what exactly happened and what books were going to be included. And Muslims wanted to include a book on Jesus's mother Mary. The church didn't want to include that book. There's all these like small things. But just the overall symbol system is so identical. It's so identical, coming down to God impregnating a great woman, a symbol of virtue, with, this child. And then she says, well, we don't pray to Jesus. Sometimes Christians pray towards Jesus. They say, dear Jesus. She says, yeah, but in the Bible, Jesus says pray to the Father. Okay, so Christians think you should pray to Jesus or the Father. Muslims think, no, you should pray to the Father, not to Jesus, because he told us. So it's like these really nuanced, we're talking like theologian debates over how to orchestrate things. But it's been shifted in a way. I think it's probably more of a culture, like Islamic culture versus Western culture. I think that's more the problem. But the disagreements are so small in the scheme of what they agree on. I think there just needs to be more of a dialogue and more of an acceptance.
Yeah. I just, we're kind of talking about the news earlier. I just see such a divide in culture. I recently asked my father what he thought, was wrong with the world. I just asked him this like very general question. He's 80. We talk every single day. So much wisdom.
Wow.
And he said his biggest fear or his biggest concern is the divide between ideas. Let's just like leave it at that. Whether it's religion or political outlook or even gender, there's such a divide between males and females, lefts and rights, Muslims and Christians. Like, there has to be a way to have a conversation understanding that we have differences, but also understanding that there are more similarities than there are differences. We're all human. We're all men and women. There's no reason to have this, frankly, dangerous divide between us. Like, it's a hostile divide, and it's going to lead to something, hopefully not, but catastrophic if we don't learn to have active conversations with each other. That's kind of why I asked you, about your relationship being different religions.
Yeah. And I think our goal should be some kind of foundational wisdom. So even though we do have disagreements, we have to have acceptance. I think we've been fed a lot of anti-wisdom in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so, are all ideas valid? I don't know. Maybe some ideas are being used for a different reason, or used to discourage people. So I think if we can not only get along and accept that people have different views, but learn how to find some true wisdom that's universal. There should be some universal. Peter Thiel talks about, he asks his people when he's going to give them a job interview, what's something that you believe that no one else would agree with, very few people would agree with. Mine would be that we don't disagree. We don't have different opinions. We have different facts. I don't think people have that many different opinions. I think we all have the same opinions. Want everyone to be happy. Don't want people to unjustly be treated. We all have the same opinions, but we have different facts. If we do this, then this is going to happen. This people did this. If you do this, then this. We're building these different facts. We all kind of have the same opinions. So I think maybe if we got the facts a little bit better, or had some kind of more divine wisdom, a little bit more wisdom, then I think that the disagreements would kind of level out too.
Yeah, I like that. I think mine would be emotions are the universal language that we can all understand. And somehow, I don't have it figured out, but emotion is what's going to bring us together again. But I think it's also going to be responsible for pulling us apart if we let it. But you understand love, you understand loss, you understand grief, you understand all these emotions that we feel. And so does our enemies. So does everyone. Literally every single person on this earth understands what it feels like to love someone or lose someone. And there has to be some way to connect over that. You know what I mean? I don't have it figured out. This is just something I think about in my spare time.
Yeah. I mean, I think emotions have gotten a really bad rap because we think, you behave immaturely or unintelligently if you're emotional. Abraham Hicks, that whole thing, she talks about the emotional guidance system. That was kind of an interesting thing to go down, but the emotional guidance system, that your emotions are guiding you. But I think it's suppressed emotions that cause the problems. Some people say, I'm not very emotional. Well, usually those people have a lot of anger and frustration. They might not be emotional, but they have anger and they have frustration because they're suppressing their emotions. So yeah, I think having a more kind of like letting your emotions swirl around your body a little bit, experiencing them more. I mean, that's what's great about writing and songwriting is you have to go deep into emotions.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
How do you release your emotions? Create some.
Right.
Paint, write a song, create a film. Like there's so many ways. We already touched on it, but like I said, I just think creativity is a way to release your emotions, and it'll fix the mental health crisis that's going on. Well, Tyler, I appreciate you coming on the show, brother. This film you have going on, super inspirational. I'm really happy. When I heard about you, it was kind of surreal. Like I was in Afghanistan in 2021. You're creating this film about this woman who escaped Afghanistan in 2021. So I really wanted to bring you on the show, talk about it some more. I appreciate you diving into creativity a little bit, kind of the idea behind Hollywood, dare I say corruption of Hollywood, but that's kind of what it is. And just a whole new perspective on storytelling, where it is and where it needs to go and the impact it has on culture. So I appreciate you coming on and talk about all that.
Thanks. Yes. And then if anyone in your audience, I know you got a big network out there, if they want to reach out, Tyler K at filmnouveau.com, I think you have a link to that or something like that. But they can reach out if someone kind of gets triggered by this and they feel like they want to get involved. We've had a lot of serendipity in this project, a lot of people getting pulled from random directions that ended up being really important. So, but yeah, thank you for sharing your story. It was really good hearing your kind of perspective on everything. Yeah.
The way I like to wrap up every podcast, and maybe you can kind of cater this to filmmakers or just creators in general, but what words of advice or what words of wisdom would you have to someone struggling out there? And that could mean anything, struggling to create something, struggling mentally, just struggling in general. What would you say to them?
Yeah, all your truth is in that pain. You know, if you can figure out what the truth is in that pain, that's good stuff right there. But you know, my message always to the young filmmakers of just kind of anyone that's called out to be a filmmaker is just we're kind of starting on from scratch with cinema. You know, don't look too far back. You know, get some inspiration a little bit, but don't be afraid to kind of create new films, new stories that we haven't looked at before. And people that haven't, you know, like people that haven't gotten a lot of education in film but are still called to it, you know, now's the time.
Yeah. The truth is in the pain. I resonate with that. All right, Tyler, I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.